On the evening of June 9, 1959, a 12-year-old girl named Lynne Harper was seen riding on the crossbar of a classmate's bicycle along a country road near Clinton, Ontario. It was a warm summer evening. School was nearly finished for the year. She was last seen heading toward a highway intersection. She never came home. 2 days later, her body was found in a wooded area known as Lawson's Bush. She had been strangled with her own blouse. The autopsy would confirm the full nature of the attack. The 14-year-old boy who had given her the bicycle ride was arrested, tried, convicted of capital murder, and sentenced to death by hanging. He was widely described at the time as the youngest person in Canadian history to receive that sentence. His name was Stephen Truscott. He maintained his innocence for 48 years. In 2007, the Ontario Court of Appeal unanimously agreed with him. The real killer of Lynne Harper has never been identified. The case remains one of Canada's most consequential and most unresolved criminal investigations. Clinton, Ontario, in 1959, was a small town built around the Royal Canadian Air Force Station nearby. The base had a population of approximately 2,000 personnel and their families. It was a tight-knit, structured community, the kind of place where children knew their neighbors and parents trusted the roads. Cheryl Lynne Harper was born on August 31, 1946, in New Brunswick. Her father, Leslie Harper, was a Royal Canadian Air Force officer, and the family had transferred to RCAF Station Clinton in July 1957. By the summer of 1959, Lynne was 12 years old, 5'2", brown hair, blue eyes. She was a student at the base school and was known to her classmates and teachers as a sociable, active girl who attended Girl Guides, Sunday school, and Bible class. On the afternoon of June 9th, Lynne came home from school at around 5:30. She tried to get permission to swim at the base pool, but could not. After dinner at home with her family, she left the house again at approximately 6:15 in the evening. She walked to the base school grounds and arrived there around 7 o'clock. It was there that she encountered Stephen Truscott, a 14-year-old classmate. Several children on the road that evening later told investigators they had seen Lynne on the bicycle with Truscott, heading north along County Road toward the Highway 8 intersection. At 11:20 that night, Lynne's father reported her missing when she failed to return home. On the afternoon of June 11th, searchers located Lynne Harper's body in a wooded area known as Lawson's Bush, situated northeast of the town. She was found approximately a quarter mile into the woodlot, not far from the Bayfield River Bridge. She was partially nude. Her clothing had been removed and was arranged near the body. The autopsy confirmed the nature of the assault. She had been strangled with her own blouse. The pathologist who conducted the initial examination was Dr. John Penistan of the Ontario Provincial Police. Dr. Penistan's autopsy focused heavily on Lynne's stomach contents, undigested food consistent with her last meal, which had been eaten approximately 2 hours before death. Based on the rate of gastric emptying, Penistan estimated the time of death as falling between 7:15 and 7:45 on the evening of June 9th. That 45-minute window would become the foundation of the prosecution's entire case, and it would, decades later, be the foundation of its collapse. Stephen Truscott told investigators what had happened on the evening of June 9th. He said he had cycled Lynne to the Highway 8 intersection, where she indicated she wanted to be let off. He watched her approach a gray vehicle. He said she appeared to get in. He then returned home. Bob Lawson, the farmer who owned the property that included Lawson's Bush, and a neighbor reported to the RCAF guardhouse that they had seen a strange car parked near the fence that evening, with a man and a girl inside. Other witnesses also placed Lynne near the Highway 8 intersection, consistent with Truscott's account. Investigators did not pursue these accounts with the weight they warranted. Instead, the investigation focused on the 45-minute window established by Dr. Peniston's time of death estimate. Stephen Truscott had been with Lynne during that window. By the logic of the prosecution's case, that made him the killer. The trial of Stephen Truscott began on September 16, 1959, in Godric, Ontario. He was 14 years old. The prosecution's case rested on 4 pillars: eyewitness accounts placing Truscott as the last person seen with Lynne, Dr. Peniston's time of death estimate creating a window that only Truscott could fill, his conduct in the days after her disappearance, which the Crown argued reflected consciousness of guilt, and physical evidence including an abrasion observed by a doctor attributed to the assault. The defense argued that Truscott had dropped Lynne at the highway and returned home. His account was consistent. Multiple witnesses supported elements of it. The gray vehicle had never been located or investigated. On September 30, 1959, the jury returned a verdict of guilty with a recommendation for mercy. The judge sentenced Stephen Truscott to death by hanging. The sentence was commuted to life imprisonment by the federal cabinet on January 21, 1960. The same day, his first appeal was dismissed. Stephen Truscott was paroled on October 21, 1969, after serving a decade in prison. He continued to maintain his innocence. The legal battle that followed the conviction spanned nearly half a century. On January 21, 1960, the Ontario Court of Appeal dismissed Truscott's first appeal. In 1966, journalist Isabelle Labourdes published The Trial of Stephen Truscott, a detailed challenge to the conviction's forensic foundations. The book generated a public outcry and led the federal government to refer the case to the Supreme Court of Canada in an extraordinary procedure. The only time in Canadian history that the Supreme Court has sat as a court of first appeal in a murder case. The court reviewed the conviction in 1967. The majority upheld it. One justice, Mr. Justice Emmett Hall, dissented. In 1969, Truscott was paroled. He changed his name and lived quietly for decades under the name Stephen Bowers in Guelph, Ontario. His identity as the convicted killer in the Lynne Harper case was not publicly known for many years. In 2001, journalist Julian Schur published a detailed re-examination of the case. That same year, Truscott's lawyers filed a formal appeal with the federal justice minister. In 2002, retired Justice Fred Kaufman was appointed to review the case. His report, released in 2005, concluded that a miscarriage of justice had probably occurred. In 2004, the Federal Minister of Justice referred the case back to the Ontario Court of Appeal for a fresh hearing, a formal acknowledgement that serious questions about the conviction had never been adequately resolved. In 2006, Lynne Harper's body was exhumed. The hope was that modern DNA technology could produce new forensic evidence. The exhumation did not yield usable DNA. The case would have to be decided on the science that already existed and on a fundamental reassessment of what that science actually proved. The 2007 appeal hinged on 2 scientific arguments that had not existed or had not been available in 1959. The first was forensic entomology. In the original investigation, the presence of blowfly larvae on Lynne's body had been noted but not systematically analyzed. By 2007, the science of using insect activity to establish time of death had advanced significantly. Experts brought before the Court of Appeal determined that the stage of blowfly larval development found on Lynne's body was not consistent with a death on the evening of June 9th. The larvae indicated a death more likely occurring on June 10th, the following day. On June 10th, Stephen Truscott had a documented and verifiable alibi. The second argument concerned the stomach contents analysis on which the original conviction rested. Medical experts testified before the court that gastric emptying, the rate at which food moves through the stomach, is highly variable and is affected by numerous factors, including stress, fear, and physical activity. Dr. Peniston's original estimate had treated this rate as fixed and reliable. It was not. The 45-minute window that had convicted a 14-year-old boy and sentenced him to death was, by the standards of modern forensic science, not a reliable foundation for any conclusion about time of death. The original pathologist had, in fact, produced 3 different versions of his time of death estimate during the investigation. 2 of those versions had not been disclosed to the defense at trial. On August 28, 2007, the Ontario Court of Appeal delivered its unanimous decision. The conviction of Stephen Truscott was quashed. The court ruled it a miscarriage of justice. The justices found that the original verdict was unreasonable given the evidence that had been available, and that the forensic foundation on which the prosecution had built its case was fundamentally flawed. The concealment of 2 earlier versions of Dr. Peniston's time of death estimate compounded the injustice. Stephen Truscott was 62 years old when the conviction was overturned. He had spent 10 years in prison, years covering his entire adolescence and early adulthood, and had lived from that point forward under the shadow of a murder conviction he did not accept. The court's ruling stopped short of declaring him factually innocent. It established only that the original verdict was unreasonable given the evidence. In 2008, he received $6.5 million in compensation from the Ontario government. Lynne Harper's murder remained, and remains, unresolved. Over the decades, several individuals have been named in connection with the murder, none formally charged. The most documented alternative suspect is Alexander Kalachuk, a Royal Canadian Air Force sergeant stationed at Clinton who had a documented history of sexual offenses involving young girls. 3 weeks before Lynne's murder, he had been charged with attempting to lure a 10-year-old into his car. That charge was dismissed 12 days before Lynne disappeared. He died in 1975. A retired OPP officer, Barry Rule, later published a book identifying a different suspect under a pseudonym. In 2024, an unverified claim linked the case to Gerald Fremlin, the late husband of Nobel laureate Alice Munro. None of these claims has resulted in a charge or a confirmed investigative conclusion. The Ontario Provincial Police considers the case effectively closed following the 2007 acquittal, though tips are still reviewed. The gray vehicle with the yellow license plate, the car Stephen Truscott said he watched Lynne approach on the evening of June 9th, was never traced. The driver was never identified. Lynne Harper was 12 years old. She left her house on a June evening and did not come home. Whoever took her from that road has never been found. This is Obscura case, where every mystery deserves to be remembered.